Hello, everybody. I spoke at the South African Energy Efficiency Convention in 2015. It was from the 11th to the 12th November 2015, Emperor's Palace in Gauteng. It was their 10th anniversary conference. And if we search for David, we'll see that I spoke on two things. First talk was about renewable embedded energy and storage as part of an integrated smart energy efficient grid. And then my other talk was social capital in an African energy system. And this is the talk I'm talking about today. In order to have growth, we need infrastructure, base load, and very big power stations. But finding trained staff for coal and nuclear power stations for their build, operation, and maintenance is proving difficult. The first thing we need to look at is what is base load. So base load is the load that gets put on a power station that allows the power station to be built. So when you look at a 4 or 5 gigawatt power station being built, then that power station needs to have customers. So before SCOM goes and builds the power station, they look at their needs and they say, okay, what do we need? Who's going to be our customer? And maybe it's going to be a smelter or a mine or somebody that's going to be in operation for 30 years, a few big customers such as shopping centers and so on, and that becomes the base load. People mistranslate base load to say that's how much the output is of the power station, but at least 60 to 70% of a power station's build needs to be sold in advance to make that power station economical. So let me close Adobe Acrobat Reader, and then let's go to here so you can see me on this whole thing. And I'm going to share my other tab sheet, which is going to be a mind map. And this is the mind map that I'm going to present now. So the mind map is called Social Capital in an African Energy System, as you saw before. It's part of People as Infrastructure conference at the South African Energy Efficiency Conference in November 2015. Mind map by David Lipschitz, presentation by David Lipschitz. So first thing we can do is double click here, and we'll see that this is my business card, and unfortunately pops up on the wrong screen, and now you're not going to see it because I've shared that screen. So let's close that, and let's do stop share, stop screen. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. You're going to have to bear with me while I get this worked out and set up. So here's my screen. Let's just go here and delete that. How that ended up there, we don't know, but we have the business card. It pops up on the wrong screen. I'm going to put it here so you can see it. And my power station, David Lipschitz, BSc Honors MBA. At that time, I wasn't a member of the Institute of Directors. I've since resigned. And this, we had a telecom number. With fiber, we don't have telecom anymore. So I just have the cell number, email address, website. So let's go and zoom in. You've all been zooming in the last few years. People think that video conferencing is new, but we've had Skype forever, and we've had lots of other tools. So people have been using Teams and people have been using Zoom and MS Teams. MS Teams is based on Skype and so on. So if we zoom in, we see that we have 5 sections: energy efficient learning, African challenges, our existing system, an alternative system, and what do we need. These colors are created automatically by my mind mapping tool, which is called Simple Mind. The colors don't really mean anything, but quite often I'm surprised that the colors actually become significant. And like the alternative system is green, and that's exactly what it should be. And let's go zoom into number 1. So Carl Steyn spoke the South African Energy Efficiency Confederation Conference opening message, and he said, I've just got to move the screen across here. I'll solve this problem. He said South Africa needs trained, knowledgeable, and skilled individuals who are provided with opportunities and resources to innovate, develop, make available, propose, implement, and evaluate solutions and energy management opportunities. This cannot happen with only individuals working on their own. It needs everyone from different disciplines and knowledge levels to work together to share information towards achieving the same vision. So the issue is that if you're going to build any system, you need skilled, knowledgeable, and trained individuals. And they must be provided with opportunities. So if you're going to build a nuclear power station, you need a nuclear engineer. They're going to have to study nuclear engineering for between 4 and 6 years. They're going to have gone to school for 12 years. And they're probably going to have a doctorate if they're going to design the establishment. They're going to have a few years of working, maybe 10 years of working. So probably to get this kind of skill you need to have a 40-year-old person who's got all that capability and experience. With a coal power station, you're going to need possibly the same kind of technology, and the coal power station has got all kinds of parts, which we're going to look at in other slides and see why it is that Medupi and Kusile coal power stations in South Africa are so late and behind schedule. But you've got water management, you've got computer management, you've got getting coal to the right place, you've got getting ash out of the power station, you've got lots of problems and things that need to be solved. So now when you look at renewable energy, it's on a house or it's on a building or it's in a field, the resource is already there. It takes a few days or months to install. It doesn't take years, such as Medupi and Kusile, which have taken such a long time to build. Medupi and Kusile also, they were going to cost 79 billion rand each. They're currently going to cost about 250 billion each. They're 5 years behind schedule. They're 100% late. They were meant to take 5 years. They've currently taken over 10 years. And there's another graph which we're going to look at later in a different presentation, which will explain that. So social capital is about the skills, the needs, the knowledgeable individuals. So let's go and look at the definition of social capital. Just bring this over here into the screen. Social capital refers to the collective value of all social networks. Social networks is who do we know, and the inclinations that arise from those networks to do things for each other. Norms of reciprocity. So social capital has got two parts. One is who do we know, whether it's on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, whether it's because of people we work with at work, whether it's because of our customers and suppliers. And that's all the starting point. And then the main thing is the inclinations that arise from the network to do things for each other. What are we going to do for each other? What are we going to do for the commons? How are we going to benefit each other? So let's look at African challenges. Let's zoom in to African challenges. You'll see we've got terms like localization, a sparse rural population, intermittent electricity and expensive electricity, and 600 million people without grid electricity. This was in 2015. It's probably the same now because the population of Africa is growing so quickly. And from 2015 to 2022, it's been a huge increase in population and possibly even more people today without electricity. Maybe as a percentage, a lower percentage, but as a quantity, a lot more people. And then you've got this picture here, which again is on the wrong screen, and the other screen, and we've got load shedding. And as a matter of fact, today, if we go and look at South Africa, you'll see that we're actually having load shedding today. Why are we having load shedding? What's happening? We have a sparse rural population. Although we have a big percentage of people in the city and more people are moving to cities, the still rural population is difficult to get electricity to them. But even so, even in the cities, even in the businesses, we have intermittent and expensive electricity, and our electricity prices have been going up about 20% per annum for the past 10, 12 years. And at the moment, a homeowner in the city of Cape Town was paying 50 cents, South African cents a kilowatt hour in 2008. In 22, we're paying 3 Rand a kilowatt hour. That's 6 times increase. And there's a graph, which I'm going to show you in another presentation, that shows you how those increases have happened. And now it's actually quite unfair the way it's happened. Then we have localization, and localization is localization of technology, infrastructure, finance, and people. And for me, the people is the most important. Even if we import renewable energy products such as wind turbines, solar panels, batteries, inverters, cabling, although we have South African cabling manufacturers, we have South African battery manufacturers for cars. We don't have a particularly big lithium-ion industry yet. But even if we import the technology and infrastructure and finance, we can have hundreds of thousands or millions of people employed both in the industry and because of the industry. And that's something that's missed in South Africa, where you hear that there are 300,000 coal miners and people in the coal industry, and they'll lose their jobs if we move to renewable energy. But we're still going to need to have coal, and we have between 10 and 20 million unemployed people. If 10 million people got employed by 300,000 people becoming unemployed or being in training to get reemployed, that's a worthwhile exchange. So we need to look at how many people get employed in an industry, and we need to look at how many people are employed because of the industry. Our existing system. We have delivery, we have unemployment, we have learning, and we have educational requirements. Let's look at unemployment. The official rate is 26.4%. In November 2015, it's actually gone up to about 30% now. And the percentage for 15 to 25-year-olds is about 80%. And the approximately 8.7 million people in 2015 were unemployed, and there were 18 million people getting grants. And this is hugely problematic in a shrinking tax base. I think there's currently 21 million people getting grants, and also they're getting free electricity, free water, free transport, free education, a lot of subsidies, plus free medicine, and of course all of that is being paid by taxpayers. And the taxpayer base is eroding, and so government's borrowing more and more and putting South Africa as a whole into debt. And the reasons for shortage of employment, the biggest one is lack of electricity, because we currently have 32 gigawatts, whereas in 2015 we should already have had 50 gigawatts on the grid, and by 2030, according to SCOM's projection, we should have 80 gigawatts, but 20 gigawatts is going offline in the 2020s. So there's a huge build requirement required of all kinds of electricity, and we need the fastest production and the fastest rollout, and we're going to see what happens when you look at alternative systems. Personally, I believe that we should have closer to 160 gigawatts of electricity today, 2022, because we had 40 gigawatts 20 years ago. Worldwide growth in electricity is 3.6% per annum, which means that electricity production doubles every 20 years, even with energy efficiency. And so energy efficiency means that we become more efficient. We buy an energy efficient fridge, which maybe uses a third of the electricity of our previous fridge, but there's more fridges, so we need more electricity. There's more data centers, they need more electricity. So 40 gigawatts has become 80 gigawatts, but in the meantime, in the last 20 or 30 years, the population of South Africa has doubled, especially in urban areas, and so we should have another doubling of electricity, 160 gigawatts. And at the moment, we have load shedding when we have 28 gigawatts. So you can see in 2015, we had 32 gigawatts available on the grid. 5 years later, 7 years later, we have 28 gigawatts on the grid. If we have load shedding of stage 2, 3, or 4, then we only have 24 gigawatts on the grid. We should, according to SCOM, have 50, according to David, 160 gigawatts. Somewhere in the middle is the right number. And how do we get there? So learning costs are actually increasing. So if you built a nuclear power station in 1950, you needed a certain amount of resources, people, backup, and so on. And if you, let's just move this over there so it looks a little bit better. So the cost of a nuclear engineer is increasing. The cost of raw materials is increasing. The cost of spare parts is increasing. The number of factories making spare parts for nuclear power stations is decreasing. So that means the cost is going up. The number of universities offering nuclear engineering is decreasing. You can read an article by Amory Lovins, which we can look at in another presentation, or speak to me and I'll show it to you. We can go through it together. And let me just see what I wrote about Medupi. 5 gigawatts, 1 million jobs depend on Medupi. So if we had 5 gigawatts, we'd have at least another 1 million jobs. I think it would be more than that, maybe 2 to 3 million jobs. But conservatively, if Medupi was up and running and supplying electricity on a daily basis, another 1 million people would be employed. But the main thing over here we're looking at is costs are increasing, and the costs are increasing all over the place. And as you've seen with recent events, the oil price is going up. That's increasing transport costs. That means petrol prices are going up. A lot of coal is transported by road. Unfortunately, in South Africa, it used to be by rail or by direct conveyor belt from the mine to the power station. And so that would require electricity, which is relatively cheap, and transporting it by road or rail is expensive. We can unmothball power stations. We unmothballed Grootvrye, Komati, Arno, which added 1650 megawatts by 2012. And then we have new, which is pumped storage in Gula, which brought on stream 1352 megawatts by 2014. And then we have Medupi, which was meant to be 3970 megawatts by 2015. Actually, it was only 794 megawatts. Only one of the turbines was online out of 5. By that time, by 2008, when the project started, it was 79 billion rand budgeted. By 2015, it was 150 billion, and 7 years later, it's 250 billion. It was called the largest dry-cooled power station in the world, and the environmental impact assessment required so-called clean coal, which required 5 billion liters of water per year, and scrubbers required another 16 billion liters of water per year. So although it's dry-cooled, the scrubbers, which take all the bad stuff out of the flue gas desulfurization and so on, require 16 billions of liters of water per year. As far as I know, the power station is online without the EIA being in place, and therefore NERSA, the National Energy Regulator of South Africa, NERSA, has given a license to an unlicensable power station, and the same goes for a number of other power stations, where in 2010 SCOM said that they would meet in certain environmental requirements by 2015. They didn't. They were given till 2020. They still didn't. So therefore, 3 or 4 other power stations are out of their license conditions. And Medupi and Kusile are both out of their license conditions, and they're not meeting the IAs in terms of pollution and so on. One of the reasons that Medupi is so over budget and so late is because Medupi requires something called supercritical power, which requires very high pressure and temperature, and that requires very, very good quality thermal coal, whereas all the original power stations in South Africa were built to use really rubbish coal with high sulfur content. And in fact, so Eskom's biggest product is not electricity, it's ash. And you can see pictures of ash dams, and I'll show you that as well in another presentation. Please watch my presentations and see what I'm talking about. And then, so the biggest Eskom is hugely polluting, and we're actually exporting our best quality coal to China and Israel and Germany and other places, and but actually these 2 supercritical power stations, Medupi and Kusile, and perhaps Coal 3, which is now being built by the Chinese in the northern part of South Africa, is causing a lot of pollution unnecessarily and causing a lot of problems in the way that the turbines run and so on because of the high ash content coal, whereas actually we're meant to be using a different kind of coal to run this kind of power station. I did warn about this in 2008. I haven't been listened to. Maybe one day I will be listened to. Let's just look at this graph over here, which is in the white paper on renewable energy produced by the government. A white paper is a strategy document, and it's called Eskom Electricity Generation Capacity as a Function of Time. So now what you can see is you have all these additional power stations coming on stream here, and I don't know if I make this bigger, if you're able to see the names of the power stations. Let's just see. Let's just put this over there, keep making it a bit bigger, and you'll see that you've got Arno and Creole, Matla, Dunya, Tutuka, Matimba, Kendall, Majuba. And so you'll see that in 2003, which is over here, where this is, we had spare capacity. So from 1980 until 2003, there's a lot of spare capacity. And that spare capacity is sold to smelters and other big users, mines and so on, at very low prices because the marginal cost was 0. So whatever money you made was worthwhile. But even in 2003, Eskom and the government already knew that South Africa would start experiencing load shedding from 2008. And in fact, those white papers said that we would experience load shedding from 2008 until about 2030. We're currently at 2022. Load shedding is getting worse every year. We can possibly do a graph on load shedding. Let me know if you'd like that. And so you can see that now these power stations start reaching end of life. Some of the power stations that were built in 1955 have already reached end of life and closed. But you can see like this power station closes 2025, that one 2025, this one Creole in 2030. And so you can see that these power stations, the cliff really starts big time. First in 2020 and then 2025, and then really steeply goes down until by about 2030, or 2032-ish, we've lost half of the existing production, which means that SCOM need to not only supply the Medupi and Kusile, which are 5 gigawatts each, 10 gigawatts, currently 5 years late, and more than 4 times over budget. And we need to get to a point of, can we rely on SCOM to build? Is there another way? How do we get there? What do we do? And what about the usually expensive operations for raw materials and so on, the risks? There's a risk chart we'll look at, and the people that are involved. This presentation is about people. Do we have the people? How do we skill them? How do we get someone who doesn't have a matric, who doesn't have maths, who has something called maths literacy? And my questions are asked someone with school, leaving even from a good school. First question is, what's the VAT rate? That's VAT, it's 15%. Then I say, what's 15% of 100? Mostly they can't answer that. The answer is 15. And then I say, what's a half plus a quarter? The answer is 3/4. And then I say, and then I ask other mathematical type questions, simple questions. What's 5 minus 3? What's 3 minus 5? And so on. And that's what I need, just to get people to understand that we need maths, we need literacy, we need capability. So let's go and see what else we have here. Kusile. Let's see if we can open that. Go there, go there. Okay. We're meant to have 2,200 megawatts by 2015, actual 0. Education requirements, we've spoken about that a little bit before. We need engineers, scientists, project managers, financiers. This is a very long-term pipeline, very high costs, and very big shortage. So we need to find a way to overcome that problem, how to shorten the pipeline. It assumes degrees and long-term employment. And we're living in a world of the gig economy with quick employment. We want to employ people, or businesses are trying to employ people for a short amount of time and getting rid of organizational wealth. So let's look at the alternative system. What are the risks? What's the learning required? Millions of small users. What about EIAs, environmental impact assessments? What about education requirements? What about finance? What about excess production? So let's look at the risks first. This again is from the government documents, strategy documents, and policy documents, and so on. This is table 37 of the 2010 IRP, Integrated Resource Plan, and you'll see that no risk is 0. So there's 0 cost, 0 lead time, 0 security of suppliers, and 0 operational risk. So now let's go and look at coal. Coal has got a risk of 7, even in a country with so much coal. South Africa's got thousands of years of coal. So do we know the costs? We think we know the cost. So you can see here, low 1, moderate 2, high 3. So costs, future costs could escalate. Okay, we know that already. Future costs are escalating. Lead time assumptions 3. Well, we have all kinds of delays, not just because of EIA delays, but actually because of build delays. So we don't know how long it's going to take to build. We say security of supply 0 because, well, we've got huge amounts of stock. But the problem is, as I said before, we're using the wrong coal in our power stations. And then operational risks. What about people? What about supply? What about electricity? What about oil prices? What about petrol prices? What about truck parts? What about everything? So even though we have coal, we actually have a 7 risk factor. Then let's look at nuclear. South Africa wants to build new nuclear power stations. Now, we already can't build coal power stations, so we may have to get someone else to build them. The South African government is in talks with the Russian government to get the Russians to come build new nuclear power. Maybe that won't happen anymore. Maybe it shouldn't happen. Maybe it shouldn't even be discussed. We don't know what the costs are. If you look at even France, which has got a huge number of technical capability, and you look at their power stations and their new power stations, costs are going through the roof. And also because the rivers are warming up due to less ice coming off the glaciers in the Alps, which means that the rivers are warming up slightly. Now, I mean, a 1 degree increase, or even a half a degree increase in a river, dramatically increases the cost of cooling for a coal power station on a river in France, and therefore costs are going up. Lead time, we don't know about the lead time. We don't know about the parts for the power stations, pouring concrete, getting supply chains in place, enhancing the uranium, making sure that uranium miners are looked after, etc. Security of supply, risk 1. I mean, secure supply of coal, no risk 1. Even though you get uranium from Namibia and so on, it's slightly more expensive. And operational risks 3. So what about if there's a tsunami? What about if the backup power goes down? What about if we can't get the valve? What about if nuclear engineers are retiring, and aren't the nuclear engineers? What about the people requirement? So the risk of nuclear is 10. Then you see wind. The risk is only 2. Cost? Well, we have some idea what the cost is. Lead time. This is 0. We can get the wind turbines tomorrow. Operational risks, hardly any. We know the wind turbines will last 5, 10, 15 years. They'll have to get replaced. And then we have some security of supply, unless we build them locally, or because so many people are building them. The interesting thing about this is that even though this was produced in 2010, there's nothing about photovoltaic panels. So this is a shortfall in the risk analysis. What is the, we know exactly what, if we put PV in here, cost assumption would be 0, lead time 0, security of supply 0. The sun is going to shine for billions more years. It's already shined for billions of years. We say that the sun is alternative energy, but the sun has been here since the beginning. If anything, coal and uranium and gas is alternative energy. But the wind, as long as the sun shines and the earth rotates, there's going to be wind. I don't think that's going to be stopping anytime soon. So photovoltaic panels, where do we put them? What about the people we need to install them? We're going to look at that. Learning. Costs are decreasing. So let's look at that. This is a graph I've been producing. I've got a more up-to-date version, but this is the one from 2015 when I did this talk. Let's make this a bit bigger. So you'll see that in 2008, the cost of photovoltaic panels was R6.67, and that came down to R1.07 a kilowatt hour in 2017, whilst the cost of buying in the city of Cape Town went from 50 cents to R2.61. If it had gone up by the rate of NERSA approved increases, it would have been R2.07. The reason for the 60-cent difference is because there's so many people in the city of Cape Town that get free electricity. So who's paying for the free electricity? Well, I am, and other taxpayers. And then the blue line is SCOM selling price to the city. So now you can see it's gone from 30 cents to 122. That's 90 cents. So technically, this should have gone from 57 cents to 90 cents. Up 90 cents, so that's 140. So these prices should be closer to 140 if the city's price went up only by the SCOM price increase. So the problem is that SCOM puts the price up by, say, 100%. But that 100% increase from 33 cents to R1, which took 8 years, okay, that's a 70-cent increase. And if we had a 70-cent increase from 50 cents to R1.20, we hit that here, 2013. So that shows you that the cities are increasing the price of electricity by the SCOM's percentage increase, not by the amount that they're charging. So you can see this gap is getting bigger. There was a relatively small gap here where the city charged the homeowner about double what the SCOM are charging them, but today the cities are charging about 3 times what SCOM are charging, So cities are making a fortune out of electricity sales and damaging the economy because we need electricity for the economy to work. Millions of small users. Typical middle-class house. So here is a system on a roof in Bantry Bay. A friend of mine installed. That's a PV system on a roof. The nice thing about this is you don't need an environmental impact assessment for a roof. The roof's already there. You don't need any infrastructure for a roof. This house can be taken off the grid and potentially can supply the grid. It doesn't really need to supply the grid. They can put batteries in, and the amount of power that they need, maybe 10 kilowatts during the day, and then maybe they're using 30, 40 kilowatt hours a day, that can be removed from the grid. And that can be removed from the grid at peak time, say 7 p.m. or 5 a.m. and at night. So there's such a big opportunity to remove houses from the grid. I believe that houses within 3 years could create 7 gigawatts of electricity. So potentially in a third of the time, households could be incentivized. In fact, they don't even need an incentive. The only incentive they need is the legal capability to compete with SCOM and make electricity, so that SCOM can supply the big users with electricity, so that people can get jobs. Then there's this curve, which is very interesting. This curve also comes from the IRP from 2010, and it says small scale capacity, possible total small scale photovoltaic capacity. You can see now this is a projection which says that by now 2022 there'll be maybe 15 gigawatts of private electricity in the grid. Personally, I think it's somewhere between 15 and 30 already of hidden private generation in businesses, homes. Every time I walk around my neighborhood, I see more and more systems, private systems being installed. You don't need incentives for this. The only incentive you need is that your electricity cost is screaming ahead, going up 20% per annum, whilst the capability of ESCOM to supply is going down every year. You're having more and more load shedding. So you say, and more people are working from home, so they move their office. In 2002, I moved my office to my house. So I don't say I work from home, I say my office is at my house. Let me say it again. My office is at my house. And that means I'm local. I'm not remote. When I work in a building or a factory, I'm remote. And when I'm at home, I'm local. It's another word that's thrown around. We say that we're remote when we're at home. But until the Industrial Revolution started 500 years ago, we were local at home and remote. And we went to work in factories and we were remote. But we actually did everything at home. We made things at home, we sold things, we had farms, etc. So local is at home and remote is in a building or a factory. Definitely not the other way around. It's like alternative energy. Alternative energy is not renewable energy. Alternative energy is gas, coal, nuclear power. So the government itself said, even without incentives of any kind, in other words, we won't pay you for electricity, but what we'll do, the big incentive for this, and the government knew it, was rapidly increasing prices and rapidly reducing capability of the state to provide the electricity and water and other infrastructure that it promised and promises. An installation of a typical house is between 80,000 and 250,000 Rand for maybe up to a 10 kilowatt system. And but if you look at a typical system, 8 kilowatt inverter, 6 kilowatt PV, photovoltaic panels, 15 kilowatt hours batteries, and you're going. You've got your whole house, which can be independent from the grid at any time of the day or night, even running electrical cooking, electrical air conditioning, electrical pool pumps, etc. The installation takes 1 day, maybe 2 days, if there's a DB board requirement, electrical system requirement connections, and so on. Now you go and build, you get a quote for 100,000 Rand to install a system in 1 day. If the system takes 2 days, it's already 100% behind budget. If it costs 120,000, it's already 20% over budget. If you get a quote of 79 billion for a power station, it's going to take 5 years to build. How do you know when it's behind schedule? When you get a quote to put an air conditioner in for 10,000 Rand, and it's going to take 2 hours, and they're meant to install at 10 and they arrive at 2, you're already behind schedule. When it takes 2 days to install, you're already 2 days behind schedule. When they told you the cost was 10,000 Rand and it ends up being 11,000 Rand, you already know you're 1,000 Rand over budget. You know immediately. That's the wonderful thing about a renewable energy home-based system, business-based system, rooftop system, that you know immediately whether you're behind schedule. If it doesn't perform, you know immediately it's not performing. Let's just go and move this here so we can open this up. It's easy to understand. 2 days implies 1 day late, over budget, doesn't work, and see this immediately. Conventional Majupi, years, billions. Poor quality welding has slowed down things dramatically. EIAs, environmental impact assessment. So if you're going to build a power station on a field, on a farm, or in a mountain range, or you're going to build a gas pipeline out to sea, or you're going to build pylons to bring electricity from the north to the south or east to west, you need environmental impact assessment. Well, how's it going to affect the environment? How are you going to clean up? If you put a PV system on your roof, you don't need any IA. Quick. What about educational requirements? A small-scale PV installer, I did a course in a week in America, and I wrote an exam, and I became a certified small-scale PV installer. 1 month of training, if the person's got a matric. Certifications, electrician, 1 year of training. So to become a qualified electrician, 1 year of training. And if we look to the left here, you'll see my certificates. This certificate is my grid-tie photovoltaics course that I did in America in 2009 for a week. I studied with Solar Energy International, did a 5-day workshop on grid-tied photovoltaics. We did a day on batteries, but the course was basically about grid-tied photovoltaics. It was brilliant. It was in Phoenix, 2009, and I got a certificate as well, which I showed you, from NABCEP. It's called the NABCEP entry-level certificate. Now it's called the Associate Certificate, I think. And the North American Board of Certified Energy Practitioners gave me a certificate to say that I could install PV systems. I don't actually install PV systems anymore, but I do designs and I do consulting, and I will help you with your system, your big system, your staff system, your business system, your integrated system. So here's some certification I got in Phoenix in 2009 when I was getting ready for feed-in tariffs, which never happened in South Africa. We can discuss that as well. Ask me in the questions if I should discuss that with you. So, small-scale PV installer, someone with matric, 1 month of training, they're ready to install. Electrician, you get the normal electrician, and then you get the electrician who can certify the system. It's quick and easy, assumes matric, maths, and science. So, as against a nuclear engineer, a coal engineer, a coal power station needs civil engineers, needs industrial engineers, needs electrical engineers, needs mechanical engineers, needs long-term financing, possibly needs railways, pipelines, infrastructure, long-term contracts. At least 20 to 30 years of educational requirements. Small-scale PV installer, school, plus 1 month, 13 years, as opposed to 20, 30 years. Maybe even someone with a standard 8, grade 10, can also become installer. I mean, normally a team would be 3 people. You need someone who maybe doesn't even need a school education, who's going to do the heavy lifting of the panels onto the roof, and so on. And you need the electrician who's doing the wiring, and you need the supervisor who's making sure that everything is in place, that's done. And then you have the manager in the back office, and you have the supply chain, and you have all that kind of thing going on. And all of this is happening quite simply and easily. Finance. The finance already exists. And if you want to know how that works, just speak to me. I'll do a presentation about how the financing works, why you don't actually need sophisticated financing like you do. And excess production. Well, what about in a power station? If SCOM want to supply me with electricity, if I want to turn on my kettle or my stove, my range, or my geyser or my pool pump, I'm going to turn it on whenever I want, but the electricity is going to be there, which means SCOM are wasting electricity all the time. What happens if I waste electricity? What do I do with it? Well, I make sure first I fill up my batteries. Once my batteries are full, I have something called superpower electricity. That's when I turn on my air conditioning. I've got 2 air conditioners in my house. I switch them on. That's when I do my ironing for free, because my batteries are full. I've got excess electricity. I use it. If I had excess electricity in the PV or storage, I would use it for pump storage, methane batteries, desalination, solve our water crisis. What do we need? We need a mindset change. Let's go and see what this mindset says. It says, your comfort zone is here. The magic happens there, and there's this valley, which is in Psalm 23, is called the valley of the shadow of death. We need to cross that chasm. And if we cross it, we get to the magic. We need to change our thinking, our mindset. We can do it. We've built an energy-hungry system. It requires coal, nuclear power. It finances people that create war. What about buying energy for hundreds of years or 100 years from Saudi Arabia, from Iran, from Iraq, from Kuwait, United Arab Emirates? They're becoming more and more friendly, I agree. But in the past, what about from Russia today? Why is it so different buying energy from Russia? What about Venezuela, Nigeria? All these countries, we could have been off all that energy 50 years ago. We probably would have spent a quarter of the amount of money on wars if we'd done that, and on problems, and on planes not flying into buildings. We need healthy air, we need healthy water, healthy food, healthy accommodation, clothes. What kind? Already, let me create this picture. Let's look at this picture first, which is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We need our physiological needs, air, water, food. We need to make sure that we're safe. How can you be safe in a war? How can you be safe when you're supplying money to people that maybe shouldn't be getting the money? We need to socialize. How can you socialize in a world of disease caused in the main by our energy system, by lack of quality? We need self-esteem. So we need more than motivation. Motivation is fleeting. I'm motivated to get my salary. I'm motivated by something I want. But self-esteem I get because I feel strong with who I am. And then I get self-actualization, where I really explode with possibility. And I actualize who I am. The reason I'm here becomes self-evident because I'm not stuck in where's my next meal coming from. And then here, this beautiful picture from O'Reilly has got self-esteem in the middle. Self-esteem, self-awareness, unlock potential, stress reduction, competency, leadership, proactive maturity, and then the community about sharing, proactive community, less crime, less stress, less road rage, compassion, increase competency, reach out, share skills, share knowledge, and then society, shift from fear to love. That's what we want. We live in an age of fear. Move to love, everything creates. That increases productivity, increases literature, increases literacy, increases education levels, increases competency, reduces violence, reduces stress levels, reduces road rage, increases tolerance, increases health. So we build a system that does all that. And then we get to social capital. Much lower barriers to entry, we've spoken about that already, and community power stations, lower prices, local wealth creation, demand response is where SCOM can tell me, disconnect yourself from the grid. I can do that instantly. If I need to, I can turn off if it's a cloudy day, for example, as it is today, I can switch off my pool pump. I can switch off my air conditioners. I can switch off other things, and I can take myself off the grid, and SCOM can actually pay me for that, like they pay their big users. Net metering means I can supply the grid with excess electricity, so I don't just, as at the moment, I don't supply the grid with electricity, but I can. I want to. If I had time of use tariffs, I would put in more batteries, and I would supply electricity at peak time, and there's no need for a contract. SCOM doesn't need to sign a feed-in tariff agreement with me. They don't have to sign a 20-year contract with me. They can just buy electricity with me when and how they want. Tariffs will be much better. Retail wheeling means that I can supply the grid with electricity, and that electricity can go where it's needed because of the SCOM grid. So let's just make this small. See if I can do that. And you can see the whole picture at the same time. Make it a bit smaller. There we go. So now you've seen. We've just spoken about that map. And let's do this. See more of me. We've spoken about this map which is next to me. And you've seen that with the lack of skills and the kinds of people we have in South Africa and Africa who don't have nuclear engineering, not coal engineering, they're not engineers, but they know what they're doing. They know how to build things. They know how to do things, and they can. And they can be taught quickly, they can learn quickly, and they can build the energy system that Africa needs today. Thank you for watching. And if you have questions, please ask me. Please like, subscribe, and share.